So, I want to thank everybody, firstly, for all the comments from yesterday's sermon. But you know, now we've got to today take a slightly different look. And it really comes down to this time of year, the high holidays, is when we try to fix our flaws. And we all have flaws. But fixing our flaws does not mean making them go away. Our flaws, they stay with us. They remain a part of us, even as we learn how to repair damage that may have come from our flaws. And probably one of the best ways to illustrate what I mean is from an 18th century Hasidic master known as the Maggid of Dubno, or the Dubno Maggid, okay? And he tells the story that there was once a king who owned a magnificent, one-of-a-kind diamond. And this diamond was more precious to him than anything else in the world. It was the most splendid, brilliant, blue-white, clear diamond without a single blemish or a single mark. We're told that the king each day carefully would take it out of its box and he would admire it, reveling in its beauty and in its perfection. And one day, as the king was admiring his diamond, to his horror, he noticed that it had a very long hairline crack in it. How could this be? His beloved diamond was no longer flawless. He decided that he would go out of his way at whatever cost to find someone who could fix it. And so he issued a royal decree throughout his kingdom. Whoever can fix the king's diamond will be hugely rewarded. And when they heard of the reward, master jewelers from all over the kingdom came to try and fix the diamond. One by one, they inspected it, gazing at it closely to try and figure out how to repair this diamond. But each one sadly shook his head and said it's impossible. The diamond simply could not be restored to its original perfection. And so the king became extremely depressed. Months passed, and then one morning, an old jeweler, we'll call him Montreal, okay? So I don't know his name, arrived at the palace. And he said, I have learned that your diamond has a crack in it. Show it to me. Let me see what I can do. The jeweler gazed at it intently, turning it over in all different directions. And finally, Moishe said to the king, I can make your diamond beautiful once again. Give it to me. Do not contact me. I will contact you when it's done. And months later, the jeweler returned with the king's diamond. With great anticipation, the king opened the box. He picked up the diamond and he held it to the light. The king turned red with fury. He couldn't believe what he saw. The crack was still there. You have not fixed my diamond, he screamed at the jeweler. But your highness, began the jeweler, I never said that I could repair the crack. That is impossible. I told you that I would make your diamond beautiful again. And that's exactly what I did. Look at the diamond again, and this time look at it more carefully. The king held up the diamond, and now he saw exactly what the jeweler meant. The crack was still there, but the jeweler had turned it into an elegant rose. The crack was now a graceful stem, and the jeweler had carved exquisite petals, wonderful leaves, and even little thorns. emanating from it. There is nothing wrong with your diamond, the jeweler said. It's true that it has a flaw in it, but that flaw has now been transformed into something beautiful. Once you, Your Highness, change your perspective. And upon hearing those words, the king now knew that his diamond was the most unique jewel in the entire kingdom. My friends, life is all about perspective. Because it's only with the proper perspective on life that we can turn a fatal flaw, that deep scratch, into a graceful stem. There is a whole Japanese art form based on this principle of getting a perspective on flaws. It's called kintsugi. Now, kintsugi is a centuries-old technique of repairing broken pottery with gold. Instead of using invisible glue to try and fix that crack so nobody sees it, the artisans use gold, turning those cracks into beautiful gold veins in the pot, just as the jeweler transformed the crack in the diamond into a stem of a rose. Note that while having the right perspective is essential, perspective alone does not change a flaw into something beautiful. It still takes work. The jeweler spent months working on the flaw to create a rose. It takes gold and effort to turn a broken pot into a beautiful piece of kintsugi art. But it has to start with perspective. It has to start with seeing the flaw and seeing how that flaw can be transformed. Today, Rosh Hashanah, the Day of Judgment, is the perfect opportunity to get some perspective on our lives and our habits. At this time, the start of the new year, our tradition encourages us to engage in what's called Cheshbon HaNefesh, literally an accounting of the souls. And the purpose of Cheshbon HaNefesh is to take stock, to take a step back from our lives, to look at our lives with a fresh set of eyes, to acknowledge what we don't like and what we would like to change and fix, and then set up a plan to go about making those changes that we deem appropriate. Just as the first thing the jeweler had to do was to look at that diamond, not like the other jewelers, but with fresh eyes to see what a rose could take, or how a rose could take the place of a simple crack. These changes can be in any aspect of our lives. We might ask if we're in the right job or if we're in the right career. We might choose to learn a new skill or take up a new hobby. We might want to repair a broken relationship. We can also look at things that aren't necessarily broken, but that we could do better at. We can aspire to self-improvement, to become more kind, to become more generous. We can even decide that it's time to up our religion game, to take on more learning, perhaps more mitzvot or involvement in Jewish communal life. The traditional process of teshuvah, which is always translated as repentance, and by the way, it doesn't mean repentance. Teshuvah means to return. It's a coming back. It's described by Maimonides when he says we do cheshbon hanefesh, self-examination, looking for where we screwed up. We then try and repair any damage we've done. And only after we've done what we can to repair any damage our hurtful action did, can we ask for forgiveness. first of the person we've wronged, and only after they forgive us, then we can come before God. One problem with this model is it can be very depressing, because if all we do is look at our flaws, we can quickly become depressed and perhaps even lose faith. We might come to the conclusion that we have so many flaws, it's hopeless. And then we give up and we fall into despair. The 19th century Hasidic master, Reb Nachman of Breslov, cautions against this. Rabbi Nachman taught that we should judge everyone favorably. Because if you want to get a problematic person to change their ways, instead of berating them and telling them what a schmo they are, focus on whatever good things they might have done. Because you know why people don't want to hear criticism? You know what they do? They tune out. But everyone loves to listen to praise. Even a wicked person must have done something good. Some few mitzvot, perhaps. And instead of focusing on the negatives, focus on the positives. Encourage them to do more good things. And as people experience the joy of doing good, you know what? They're going to feel good about it, and they're going to want to do more good. And the bad gradually will fall away. Now, this principle of management is actually spoken about by the guru Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker, he encourages this. He recommends that managers build on strengths, find ways to enable their team members to do the things that they are best suited for. And Reb Nachman tells us it is especially important to apply the same principle to ourselves. Instead of focusing on only our flaws, he tells us that we need to see the good in us, the good points. And only once we have done a cheshbon hanefesh, that we've seen the good in us, can we then resolve to do more good. And, of course, then the negative flaws will gradually subside. I want you to remember one thing, and it's very important, that the errors of our past don't own us. We own them. And therefore, we must not give up to allowing them to control us. They don't control us. We control them. One of my teachers so profoundly put it. He said that once you set about with true contrition, correcting an error caused, you are no longer the same person who committed the original error. There is a musical that some of you might have seen. It's a Broadway musical. It's called The Waitress. And it actually provides an incredible role model for us. Jenna was a young woman who worked as a waitress at a diner in a small southern town. And she was married to an abusive, out of work, no good Nick. But she didn't have the courage or the means to leave him. And to make matters worse, Jenna suddenly found herself saddled with an unplanned and an unwanted pregnancy, adding to her miseries. Jenna dreamed of better times. She happened to be an expert pie maker who created pies that mirrored her topsy-turvy life, such as the Key to Happiness pie. And Jenna thought that she had found a way out when she learned of a pie baking contest in a nearby county. Jenna knew that this was her chance. It was a fresh start that she could have. And encouraged by her friends, encouraged by her fellow waitresses at the diner to enter, she did so. She started hiding her tip money from her husband, hoping that she could save up enough money to travel to the contest and win it, and perhaps start a new life. Of course, as they say, the best laid plans hands, etc., etc. Her husband found the hidden money, which Jenna told him that she was saving to buy a crib for the new baby. He took the money, and with it, he killed Jenna's dream of entering the contest and starting life afresh. There's a very famous rabbi in the Talmud known as Rabbi Nachman Gamzu, and he was called Nachum Gamzu because no matter what happened to him, he would say, Gamzu l'tova. This too is for the best. He accepted everything because he believed that everything comes from God, and therefore whatever happened must have been God's plan and therefore good. And at this point in the story, if he were in Jenna's shoes, what would he say? He would say, Gamzu l'tova. However, let's be totally honest. Very few of us are on such a lofty level. But at a time like that, we can and we should pause to take stock, to engage in cheshbon hanefesh, to try and figure out how we may have contributed to our circumstances and look at what can be done. And that's exactly what Jenna did. She reached deep inside, and as expressed by the lyricist Sarah Bareilles in soul-searching words that can apply to any of us, Jenna says to herself, it's not simple to say that most days I don't recognize me. It's not easy to know that I'm not anything like I used to be. She's imperfect, but she tries. She is good, but she lies. She's hard on herself. She is broken and won't ask for help. She is messy, but she's kind. She is lonely most of the time. She is all of this mixed up and baked in a beautiful pie. She is gone, but she used to be mine. It's not what I asked for. Sometimes life just slips in through the back door. If I'm honest, I know I would give it all back for a chance to start over and rewrite an ending or two for the girl that I knew. She is gone, but she used to be mine. Jenna manages to look at both the good and the bad. On the one hand, she's messy, she lies, she's broken. But she's also good, she's kind, and she tries. And isn't that most of us? All these different traits, good, bad, mixed up, and all baked into a beautiful pie. Perhaps clinging to her awareness of her good points is what gave Jenna enough hope to be able to find her way out of her bleak situation. She gave birth to a baby girl and found the faith that she needed to move on without needing to rely on or winning a pie baking contest. Instead, she relied on the support that was around her, her friends. She left her husband and ended up owning the diner that she once worked at. At that point, she could have looked at how things turned out and said, Gamzu l'tova, this too was for the best. But at that moment, her husband took her money. It would not have been so easy to say that, even it eventually turned out to be true. Now, a few minutes ago, we recited the Musaf Amida. And after each of the major sections, you heard the Chazan blow the shofar. He blew it during the quiet Amida. And before we blew the shofar, we recited a prayer. And after the hearing of the shofar, we said another prayer, Hayom Harat Olam, which is translated in our machzos, today is the birthday of the world. But as those of you who read the bulletin and read my message in the bulletin will know, that this translation isn't correct. The correct translation of Hayom Harat Olam should be that the world is pregnant. The word harat means pregnant, not birth. So why do we say these words? We said them 3 times. We said Hayom Harat Olam. What does it mean when we say that today the world is pregnant? And what we mean is that as we approach the new year, like Jenna, we too are all pregnant. And now that we know that while pregnancy is a good thing, no one would want to be in that state forever. Pregnant means prepared for change, ready to give birth to something new. But in the case of the new year, our new selves, giving birth is not inevitable. The pregnant moment can pass, and instead of giving birth to a new and improved version of ourselves, the possibility for change can simply go away, can be absorbed back into ourselves. And if it was never there in the first place, it certainly can slip back into the way we were, never to be seen again. We can go back to living our lives on autopilot. Rosh Hashanah is a gift. And now you may be thinking, 2 full days of sitting in shul and having to listen to the rabbi twice? What gift is that? Wouldn't that be count as a burden? Rosh Hashanah is a gift because it gives us time to set aside from our normal circumstances, time to reflect on our lives, time to consider what we want to do with our lives. It's true that it says in the Psalms, the gates of repentance are always open. But we don't pay attention to those gates most of the year. Rosh Hashanah makes us aware that those gates of repentance are open. The possibility of change is in the air. And if we don't take advantage, the moment will pass. We ourselves close those gates because we go back to being blind to the possibility of change. I have a different idea about Ne'ilah. People tell you, well, Ne'ilah is about the closing of the gates, and we want to get in before the gates close. It's my belief. The gates don't close. They never close. We are the ones that close the gates. It's up to you to decide which side you're on. And by forcing us to think about lives, Rosh Hashanah confronts us with the uncomfortable idea that whatever it is we're doing with our lives is a conscious choice. But if we are in a job or in a relationship, and if we are not happy, we are choosing to stay there instead of choosing to change. Are we living the lives we would really choose if we could? Because we can. We can all make these choices. In the musical, Jenna talks about her perspective on how life can change. And she says, everything changes and all my mistakes, they make sense when I turn them around. Everything changes. What I thought was so permanent fades. And I swear, I'll remember to say that we are both born today. I don't know, but now I see that sometimes what is meant to be. My blurry lines, my messy life, coming to focus in time. Maybe I can heal and I can breathe because I can feel myself believe that everything changes. My friends, on Rosh Hashanah, we are given the choice. Are we going to use this pregnant moment to actually give birth to a new and improved version of ourselves? Or are we going to choose to stay stuck in whatever rut we find ourselves in? Let us use this moment, this opportunity, this gift from God to look at ourselves honestly, both the good and the bad, and resolve to do more good and less bad. And may God grant us the courage to see that if we can make the changes that we need to make, when we come out the other side, we will be able to see that whatever challenges we had, it was truly Gamzu Lutova. They were challenges that we needed to spur us to make the changes we needed to make. So let us not allow this moment filled with potential to slip away from us. Shana Tova. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to continue now with the